Tampa Bay doesn't exactly have a high-powered offense, but Tampa Bay put some points on the board against New Orleans. Week 2, Washington, a team who looked totally lost in Week 1 against the Giants, came out and hung a ridiculous amount of points on New Orleans. So, I don't think New Orleans' defense is any good, and they haven't been. They weren't good last year. I don't believe they were good the year before that, and they're not good this year. They probably won't be good next year. All right, but I really like Jay Cutler against that New Orleans defense, especially playing at home with Brandon Marshall back and the continued production, the continued improvement. There you go, of Eddie Royal, rookie wide receiver. So I like Jay Cutler as my number 1 quarterback. He is a must start every week. He's worked his way right up into that top tier of quarterbacks, and it's only been a couple games, but you can tell if you watch this kid, you can tell. You can tell. He knows what he's doing. He's comfortable back there, and he has a big, big arm, and he has some nice receivers to throw the ball to, and a nice tight end as well. You don't leave that out. Jay Cutler, number 1. Number 2, Eli Manning. All right? The Giants are at home against Cincinnati. Again, this is really easy. If you watch the show a lot, if you tune into it, you'll see that the picks I make are mainly good players against bad defenses. It's really easy. It's not a science. When you get down to the sleepers and the letdowns, then that gets a little tricky. But for the most part, you put really good players on really good teams in your top 5 if they're playing bad teams. Cincinnati's a bad team. So Eli Manning is number 2. He's having a nice year. He's throwing. Well, I think he only had that 1 rushing touchdown in Week 1, but he still had quite a few yards. And last week, I believe he threw 3 touchdown passes. I'm not sure he's not on any of my teams, but I'm pretty sure he threw 3 touchdown passes. And I don't expect any less from him this week at home against Cincinnati. I like the Giants to score a lot of points. I'm not sure anybody's better than the Giants. There, I'll just throw that out there. I'm not sure anybody's better than the Giants, with the exception of maybe Dallas. I think the top teams this year are in the NFC, and we'll see how that works out. But that's what I think, and I really like Eli Manning against Cincinnati at home this week. Number 3 on my list, and here's an exception to the rule, because this is a guy not going up against an easy defense at all. All right, Tony Romo on the road against Green Bay. Green Bay, who has a pair of cornerbacks who are, I would say, second to none in the league, and Woodson and the other guy. Sorry, I know his name. I'm trying to speed through this and I'm not thinking. But Romo at Green Bay, I still like a lot, because Tony Romo, kind of like Jay Cutler, just chucks the ball around. All right, and he has the best targets to throw to in T.O. and Jason Witten. And I really like Pat Creighton, too. He's emerging as a decent number 3 wide receiver on your list, or if you're in a deep league and you only have 2 wide receivers, you might have to throw him in every now and then. But Pat Creighton, as much as Romo's throwing the ball and as good as he's looked, Pat Creighton's not a bad start. But I like Tony Romo at Green Bay, even though Green Bay has a really good D. I understand that, but I think Tony Romo can overcome at least enough to be in the top 5. I like Tony Romo at number 3. Number 4, another quarterback who's going up against a pretty good defense, but still I like him just because of what he's done so far. Donovan McNabb, who has been reborn, who I had, and if you look on my Fantasy Football Face Punch MySpace page, and you look at my rankings, which I have listed in my blogs, listen, I have Donovan McNabb down at like 18. I have him doing terrible this year, and I gotta say, from the first 2 games, the indications are I was way off. I didn't think he had anybody to throw to, and I didn't think that another year, from his injury, I didn't think that was going to be enough to do it. I thought maybe he had just fallen off a little bit. I was wrong. Donovan McNabb is the real deal, and he's got a couple nice young receivers in Philly, and he doesn't even have his regular receivers back yet. I wait till his number 1 and 2 come back, and man, it just heads up. But I like McNabb, and the Eagles are at home against Pittsburgh. Not necessarily an easy matchup, but Donovan McNabb, like Tony Romo, will overcome and have a big day. Don't forget, McNabb went up against the Dallas defense last week, which is one of the tops in the league. And Philly, even though they lost the game, really kind of had their way with that Dallas defense. So I'm not sure anybody's going to be able to put a lid on McNabb this year, and he's my number 4 quarterback for Week 3. Number 5, I like Phillip Rivers against the New York Jets. Listen, I think Phillip Rivers' time has come. Now, we've his first year playing a couple years ago, he looked okay. He looked decent. And we thought, well, hey, this kid could be the real deal. But then last year, he kind of disappointed. He wasn't really statistically what everybody thought he would be. And, so he kind of fell off the radar a little bit. He went deep in drafts. He's probably a backup, or at least drafted as a backup in your draft. I know he wasn't mine. But he has emerged as a legitimate starter, even with his number one receiving target, Antonio Gates, dinged up. All right, which I'm not sure the exact status on Gates, so check that out if you have him. But Gates has been dinged up all year. All right, Tomlinson left last game. He's got a jammed big toe, and still Phillip Rivers is putting up gaudy numbers, giant numbers. And this week, he is at home against the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. That's a big stage, that's a big game, and that's a Jets D that's not that good. So I like Phillip Rivers this week with his targets, Vincent Jackson, Chris Chambers, and a possible Antonio Gates. And we'll see what happens if LT comes back. But even if he doesn't, Darren Sproles coming out of the backfield seems to be a pretty just a valuable weapon back there. So it's okay. It's okay if LT doesn't come, at least as far as Phillip Rivers goes. But I like Phillip Rivers as a number 5 QB. This week I have left off Peyton Manning. You'll probably notice Elwood. I'm sorry, but I don't think he belongs there this week. I just don't. Jacksonville's a good defense. They always play Indy tough. That's going to be a tough game for Peyton Manning, which hurts me because he's my starting quarterback. All right, it's going to be a tough game for Joseph Adai. Hurts me. That's my starting running back. So it's hard for me to keep them out of the top 5, but I got to. This is going to be a tough matchup. Jacksonville needs to win that game. Let's go to running backs. My number 1 running back of the week. All right, it's not Adrian Peterson. It's not LaDainian Tomlinson. It is Michael Turner, because they are taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Falcons are at home. And you remember what happened in Week 1 when Michael Turner had a favorable matchup, which was they were at home against Detroit, and Turner goes off for over 200 yards. And listen, I was playing him that week. That's the kind of luck I've had. Goes off for over 200 yards, huge week, tears it up. And this week they're at home against Kansas City, an equally bad defense. So I look for Michael Turner to have I know he kind of dropped off last week a little bit. They had somewhat of a tougher matchup. This week it'll be different. You'll see Michael Turner returns to Week 1 form and has a gigantic day against Kansas City. Write it down. I said it. Number 2, I like Frank Gore.